Hey everyone, it's Alexander, the real Mr. Robinson. Welcome to the channel. This is my review for Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. This movie came out in 1991, 30 years ago, is the sixth Nightmare on Elm Street movie, and if you thought The Dream Child was stupid, you ain't seen nothing yet. Unlike Dream Master or Dream Child, this movie doesn't take place a year after the previous film. It takes place many years afterwards, and Freddy Krueger has actually managed to kill every single child and teenager in Springwood, Ohio. There's one exception though. There's one kid that tries to get out of Springwood, but Freddy Krueger manages to torture him in his dreams. Doesn't exactly kill him. So eventually this kid finds himself in a shelter under the care of a doctor played by Lisa Zane, who is the sister of Billy Zane from Titanic. The main kid, whose name is John Doe, is suffering from amnesia, and in order to regain his memory, the doctor takes him to Springwood, and three other kids from the shelter end up becoming stowaways, and they find themselves on Elm Street at the old Elm Street house, where Freddy Krueger is not only out to kill again, but also to bring in the doctor, because this doctor is the long-lost daughter of Freddy Krueger, something that we had never been told about in the previous films. And where's Alice Johnson, you may ask? Well, that's a good question that the movie never answers. The movie doesn't even acknowledge any of the characters from the previous films. No mention of Alice, no mention of Kristen, no mention of Nancy, which in a sense is probably a good thing, because this movie, I only have one movie left to watch in this series, and that's the remake. And I would be shocked if the remake is actually worse than this movie here, because oh man. This movie is often cited by fans as one of, if not the single worst Nightmare on Elm Street movie. And I just was not mentally prepared to watch it because of everything I've heard about it. And let me tell you, it did not disappoint. Unlike the other supposed final film of a certain franchise, no, not the final chapter, I'm talking about Jason Goes to Hell, where I've heard terrible things about that movie. I saw it and went, it's not good, it's pretty bad, but I don't think it's as bad as people are making it out to be. This one, however, is as bad as everyone says it is. There are several reasons why this movie sucks, and it all revolves around the fact that it took everything that I didn't like about The Dream Child and just doubled down on it. Much like with The Dream Child, this movie does have characters that I really don't care about, and all of them this time around are pretty reprehensible. They are unlikable, they're one-dimensional, and the acting is probably the worst of the entire series. I know there hasn't been some strong acting from some of these movies, mainly The Dream Child, but the acting in this movie, especially from Lisa Zane, is terrible. It's not the worst I've ever seen in any movie, but when you consider the amount of characters in this franchise that have had a level of charisma, even if they've been played by different actors, like in the case of Kristen, there's nobody in this movie that even has an ounce of charisma except for Robert Englund. Because Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger this time around is a complete caricature of himself. Freddy Krueger is a joke. He is a Looney Tunes character at this point. The very first time we see Freddy Krueger, he is imitating the Wicked Witch from The Wizard of Oz, where he's flying outside John Doe's bedroom and goes, "I'll get you, my pretty, and your little soul too! Ha 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 ha!" And I'm like, yeah, this just sets the tone for the entire movie. I mean, was Freddy Krueger ever scary? I can't remember, because that was such a blunt approach to how this movie is going to play out. Every single scene involving Freddy Krueger has him saying some unbearable pun, has him doing some of the most ridiculous things you've seen in a horror series, to the point where if this movie could just cut out the cussing or some violence, this could have been PG. This could have easily been geared towards kids, because that's the mentality at this this point. There's one character in this movie, Spencer, who Freddy kills by controlling him as if he were a video game character. He's got sort of a knockoff Atari controller. His finger knife glove turns into a power glove. And when you see Freddy Krueger controlling Spencer from the perspective of the real world, there's Hanna-Barbera type sound effects. This character is bouncing up and down all over the place. It is ridiculous. And in ways it kind of infuriated me, because thinking back to the first 3 movies and how Freddy Krueger was scary, even when we got to Dream Warriors, where he started to become more funny, he was still threatening. And to see this character just become a complete joke is almost insulting. I'd say it's worse than any of the ridiculous elements that they put Jason through in the Friday the 13th movies. Because I've said this last year on several of the Friday reviews, that series had no idea what tone it wanted to take, at least up until Jason Lives. And since Freddy Krueger started out as such a creepy and novel idea, it just feels so embarrassing that he's stooped to this low. But at the same time, you do have to give credit to Robert Englund for just putting his all into it. He commits to turning Freddy Krueger into a Looney Tunes character, and it seems like he's having a lot of fun. So I give more credit to the actor for at least committing to the role, even if it's just a complete joke at this point. And since the movie is called Freddy's Dead, they do kill Freddy Krueger in this movie, even though this isn't the last Nightmare on Elm Street movie with Robert Englund. And the way they kill him off is flat out ridiculous. Like, it's probably in line with the rest of the movie in terms of how silly it is. But if you remember Jaws 3D, and you remember the way the shark died in that movie, Freddy Krueger's death here makes the death of the shark in Jaws 3D look masterful by comparison. Because Lisa Zane pretty much fights Freddy Krueger in the real world. She sticks him to a wall, she jabs a pipe bomb in his stomach, kisses Freddy, and then just GTFOs. Then Freddy Krueger looks at the camera and goes, "Kids." And then the body explodes. Freddy Krueger's head flies towards the screen in 3D because this was a 3D movie. The mouth opens up wide, which barfs out another Freddy head, which barfs out these dream spirits, something that was never established in the previous films at all. I don't know, it's awful. And then the movie's final line, the way it ultimately ends after Freddy's killed, it has Lisa Zane saying, "Freddy's dead." And then it cuts to credits where it shows clips from all the previous Nightmare on Elm Street films. And I'm like, no movie, you do not get to show clips of the good films. You don't get to show clips of the first movie, the second, and the third one. No, how dare you? So, what's good about the movie? Is there anything at all that's good? Well, as much as I criticize this movie for being a flat-out joke, there are a few moments that genuinely made me laugh. There's a character in this movie by the name of Carlos who has a hearing aid, and there's a sequence where he and 2 of the other characters are trying to find their way out of Elm Street because they've been going around in circles, which, fun fact, that sequence where they're driving around in circles is actually the end of Wisteria Lane at the Universal backlot. So Carlos is checking the map, but he's fallen asleep. So the map just keeps on expanding, and eventually he opens it up to where the map says, "You're fucked." That made me laugh. There's another sequence where John Doe wakes up from a nightmare. He's in bed and he's like, okay, there's nothing that could possibly get me out of bed. And then his room catches on fire. He takes a pause to look at the fire and he's like, damn it! So that made me laugh as well. And then going back to Carlos, his death scene at the hands of Freddy Krueger is actually pretty creative. Freddy basically takes away his hearing aid, gives him a new one that pretty much takes over his ear and makes his hearing ultra sensitive. So Freddy is dropping pins on the ground. Freddy pulls out a chalkboard and starts to use his finger knives to scratch the chalkboard. And Freddy's just having so much fun torturing Carlos that eventually his head explodes. And it's such an amazing kill that's totally undercut when Freddy Krueger grabs the hearing aid out of the sky and says, "Nice hearing from you, Carlos." And I'm like, damn it, really? So, yeah, this movie's terrible. It's uninspired, it's cartoonish, but not in a good way. The acting's terrible, except from Robert Englund and Yaphet Kotto. though you have to wonder what he's actually doing in this movie, because this is a veteran actor who was in Alien. The way Freddy dies is just a flat-out joke. Obviously, this wasn't the end of Freddy Krueger, but for this to be intended to be the last film, it is such an embarrassing way to go out. I'm not going to tell this movie to burn in hell because I had low expectations going in. I want to, considering that the first Nightmare on Elm Street movie is such a masterpiece, and to see this movie just become a bastardization of what that idea was, it's tempting, but I'm going to be nice and say don't waste your money. If you want to get some sort of laughs out of this movie because it is that terrible, then maybe it's worth checking out, but at the end of the day, it's just a sad movie to watch, honestly. And there you go, that's my review for Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. Now this movie made me so sad and left such a bad taste in my mouth that as soon as I was done watching it, I didn't want to move on to something else. I had to immediately jump into the 7th movie, Wes Craven's New Nightmare. You'll see my review for that movie on Friday, but let me tell you right now, the surge in quality between both these movies is like night and day. But again, you'll have to wait till Friday to hear my full thoughts on Wes Craven's New Nightmare. But until then, I want to know what you guys think about Freddy's Dead. If you've seen it, what did you think? Whatever the case may be, let me know in the comments below. And until next time, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there is only one. Hello everyone, I just wanted to say thank you all for watching my review for Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell button to get notifications. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, go check out my Twitch channel, and support me on Patreon. I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, have a good day and take care of yourselves.